let's get into this first story. So as I was talking about with Dan Orlovsky, so we have a guy named Dan Orlovsky. I'm going to show you a video actually from Jason Whitlock discussing it. Um, Dan Orlovsky was put in a position where I believe it was actually when the boxer, the Olympic boxer with the XY chromosomes, the one that we were just talking about the other day, Iman Khalif, when it was showing, I guess when it first came out, he tweeted, he said, "Protect our daughters." Now, after he tweeted that, he took the tweet down and then made some comments saying that when you work for a company like ESPN, your Twitter does not belong to you. It's not your brand, your personal Twitter. It's actually pretty much belongs to the company. And he made the decision to take that down because it does not align with the company's values. So, do we align with our religious values? Do we align with our personal principles? Do we lead with that? What do we prioritize? Or do we take the bag? All right, so we're going to look at this video, get y'all opinions on it, and we shall go from there. Hold on, let me make sure that this is shared. Let me make sure we got it shared. All right, here we go. Y'all take a look. Y'all let me know what y'all thinking. All right. All right.
All right, welcome back. Korean Cosell. I want to start with Dan Orlovsky because this is a topic you and I have talked about for years, the pressure at ESPN to conceal what you actually really think. It's pretty, I think, good that Orlovsky copped to this publicly, that, he wanted to tweet out, protect our daughters, and he admits that, like, nah, I had to delete that because I work for ESPN. To some degree, I think he might be being a little subversive here in trying to send out a message like, hey guys, this is why I can't say what I really think because ESPN will kill me for it.
Well, Jason, last week it was protect our daughters and young females. Now it's protect my paycheck. And you know what?
As y'all are watching this, I really want you to put yourselves in this position. Have you ever been, matter of fact, have you ever been in a position where, whether at work, maybe in another environment, where you had to make certain decisions that went against your morals, your values, the things that you think were right? Maybe you had to do something wrong and I don't know, it caused somebody else an issue. Maybe you had to snake somebody. I don't know. Maybe you felt you had to snake somebody. Maybe your boss told you to do something that your boss didn't want to do. So therefore you were supposed to do the dirty work. How do y'all feel about a situation like this? What decision did you make? We understand that we can all say, yo, we standing on principles. We standing on values. We got certain levels of integrity. But when you're put in that fire, in that actual situation, think back. What decision did you make? And also think back, even if you made the right decision, was it a difficult thing to do? Let's be real. Let's keep going.
But can you really argue with them? Look, I'm with you. I don't know if this was intentional for him to put out this message that, hey, guys, if you do not amplify the approved messaging, there are ramifications and repercussions. And I'm kind of thinking about this whole situation with the way he and Kirk Herbstreit are tackling this situation, no pun intended. It seems to me that Herbstreit seems to have a safety net in his own mind or a backup plan. And maybe Orlovsky is really, really safe, secure, and happy at ESPN and does not want to rock the boat. But let's make it clear.
I just got a thought that came to my mind with politics. Did politics, and maybe some of the older people, well, you don't have to chime in, but do we think that politics used to be more of a private type of thing where you didn't necessarily ask people who they were voting for, ask people who they supported, even though you may have, discussed it, but it wasn't as voluntary, or I mean, now you can't even say voluntary. People actually go from, it's not even people volunteering who they're voting for, but actually pushing and promoting a particular candidate. did it used to be more of a coveted type of thing, more of a private decision that was made within your family and your household compared to what it is now? And what's so funny is that you take a situation like, I always think about Colin Kaepernick when they say that he's bringing political issues, or just, I don't look at it as a political issue, but I understand why it would be. It is a political issue, but it's bigger than a political issue, the things that he was standing up for. But it was a political issue, and people used to complain about, oh, Colin Kaepernick, we just want to keep our sports. We just want to keep this. Think about on the job, across the board, what it's turned into with DEI, or with a bunch of these programs that we're seeing put in place, where you can't even, if you're not aligned with your company's values, personal values, if you're not aligned, I'm not even going to say your company's values, nothing wrong with that in my opinion, but if you're not aligned with the political / corporate agenda of your company, if you don't align with the allies of that particular company and their agenda, then you're put in a weird position. It has nothing to do with how well you do your job. It has nothing to do with, the companies are asking, whatever you want to call it, people to now use their personal brand to push the company's message. Now, if that's the contract that you sign, that's the contract that you sign. But in my opinion, it's really happening across the board. And even when I was driving through, where was I driving through? Maplewood the other day. And I saw a whole bunch of Kamala Harris signs. And I was sitting here saying, I was like, when did this start happening to where people started putting who they were voting for on their front yard and started advertising it? Genius, actually, whatever politician or political manager decided to put that tactic in play. Smart. I get it. But is it really what's best for our communities? Is it really is it really what's best for our, when we think about the amount of fighting that we have going on, the amount of fear mongering, the amount of propaganda that's pushed out, the amount of extremism when they say, if you vote for this candidate, you're going to be a slave. If you're going to vote for this candidate, then you're going to be this. And then you have people announcing their candidates. So now you got people driving by saying like, oh, I see that Trump sign. Look at that person living in that house must be a racist. Or I see this Kamala Harris sign. Man, that person in that house must be okay with, us transitioning our little boy to become a girl. Do you understand like the mindset, like as you're driving by and you're seeing all these things as people push and promote for these politicians, is that playing a role? Is that playing a role? And I know that's a little bit different than this particular situation with Dan Orlovsky. However, it just makes me think. It makes me think.
If you are Amina Kimes, you can flat out endorse any political candidate you want, say what you want.
And what Steve Kim is saying, I think Queez said the same thing. Shout out to Queez in the building. Queez wrote, religion and politics were not discussed, right? It was something where it's like, hey, we're not going to discuss these things. They're more personal. They're family type of decisions rather than, and maybe now that's why everything has become so fanatical, because you almost get bullied into taking a position. And perhaps maybe that wouldn't be your position, because what ends up happening, right? Based on the people that you work with, based on the people that are in your friend bubble, whatever it may be, the people that you come into contact with, you can get bullied into a position just based on not wanting to argue down how you really feel. There's a lot of people that may feel one way, but then they may not have as strong of personalities to defend their positions. And when they start entertaining the voices of the people that they come into contact with most, what does that end up doing? It ends up persuading us one way or another. So I don't know whether it's good or whether it's bad. I guess because things are so out there right now, it's easy to say like, oh, if this thing should just be more private, things would be better just based on where things are now. I don't know. Maybe these things are things that we should be discussed and should be put out there, and people should just have a backbone and be able to stand up for whatever they believe is the right way to go. I don't know. It becomes more radical and extreme on both sides. I agree. When everything is forced to be put out there. And then think about this. If they can make you take down a tweet, You got Dan Orlovsky, former NFL quarterback, working for ESPN. We're not paying you, or you're not getting paid. Damn, actually, he is. What I was getting ready to say is, from Dan Orlovsky's position, you're not getting paid to give political advice. You're not getting paid to point us in a particular direction to align with this agenda or that agenda. But in all actuality, that is exactly what you're getting paid for. We, as the viewers, we just don't realize that we're looking at ESPN, a sports show, and your boss is paying you, the people that are on the shows, to push a particular agenda. We look at it as, hey, we're just looking for sports. And that is why maybe it's so valuable for them to kind of slide in the political stuff, because what I was going to say earlier, if they can make you take down a tweet, that means they can make you put up a tweet. Now, if they can control your personal page as far as the things that you're putting out from a political standpoint and just how you live your life with your general principles and values, if they can control that on your personal page, then imagine how they're controlling you when you're actually on their platform, on their stage, being viewed by millions of people across the world, at least across the country. It's something to think about. Something to think about. Let's keep going a little bit.
On under shows, culturally, politically,
Hold
socially,
on, let me go back a little bit.
Make it safe in his own mind or a backup plan. And maybe Orlovsky is really, really safe, secure, and happy at ESPN and does not want to rock the boat. But let's make it clear. If you are Amina Kimes, you can flat out endorse any political candidate you want, say what you want on your shows, culturally, politically, socially, and have no blowback whatsoever. But here's the thing with what Orlovsky said. This was not particularly controversial. There is no gray area here, black or white. Yes, let's protect our daughters, and maybe men should not be in women's spaces where there's physical play involved. And yet, at the same time, he still had to bow down.
So I'm gonna make a little bit of a connection here. And just as I'm listening to this is what a lot of people talk about, or the places, the spaces that I'm in, or the shows that I watch. They talk about this split between the Republican Party a lot. Whether or not Donald Trump, like a lot of the people that started with Donald Trump and liked Donald Trump and his America First approach and his anti-establishment approach when he was first running, let's say, 2016, when he was going against the establishment, when nobody liked him. The Democrats didn't like him. The Republicans didn't like him. They didn't think that he was politically correct enough, all these different things. He wasn't getting the funding. He wasn't getting the sponsors. These big super PACs that Vivek Ramaswamy was talking about, Donald Trump was not getting that from the big corporations because they did not believe in him, and they did not, I guess, have an arrangement yet where they thought that giving Donald Trump a certain amount of money, supporting his candidacy, would yield them the results that they're looking for as far as supporting their agendas, which ultimately lead to putting money in their pockets, right? So now what we're seeing is Donald Trump raised a lot of this money. And what do we always talk about? What does Queez say? Follow the money, right? So whenever you're given a certain amount of money, just like Dan Orlovsky's given a certain amount of money, it is to perform a particular duty. There's just no unattached money where it's just like, oh, here, just, I'm just giving this money for people don't even give to charities for no reason. It's usually for like a tax break or something. We all know that there's some type of motivation behind it. But in this case in particular, there's become a lot of people calling out Donald Trump, saying that because he's taking all this money, now he's putting like this, the head of BlackRock and all these establishment people. His initial approach was to drain the swamp, right? To drain the swamp of all these people that have been in politics, these bureaucrats that do not get voted in but have a lot of power. That's what he was initially running on, draining the swamp. But now that he's working with these people and he's getting a lot of funding from these people, a lot of people say that his energy has changed. And it's the same thing that we're talking about with Dan Orlovsky. When people give you money, there's expectations that come along with it. It just is what it is.
Steve, what's amazing to me is just like ESPN has adopted the position that there's not another side of the argument. That that this isn't even up for debate. It's like this is settled. This is a settled position at ESPN. XY can compete against XX, and no one is allowed to have any other opinion. That's what Dan Orlovsky is basically stating. And so people just don't understand. This is like a very slippery, this is the slippery slope. It's a slippery.
We are living, we are living in the slippery slope. We're living in the end of the slope. Like, it's been slippery. We put out all these things. Maybe Barack started it, who knows, but it's already, we are there. Like, we are on the slope, approaching maybe the fastest point downhill, getting ready to crash eventually. It just is what it is. And one of the notes that I put up, or that I wrote down for myself to ask you all, was if everybody adopted this mindset, where would the world be? If everybody adopted the mindset that Dan Orlovsky has adopted, where it's like, okay, you know, if my company wants to use my personal brand, if they want to use my personal, you know, my personal platform to put out their agendas, and I'm going to prioritize that over my personal morals, values, and principles, to the point where I can't even put out a tweet saying protect our daughters in a situation like this. If everybody makes these decisions, where will the world be? And as I asked myself that question, and I asked y'all the question, perhaps we'd be in the exact position that we're in right now. Perhaps this is the reason why we're in this position, because when people have been presented with the options of either taking a profit or staying 10 toes down on your principles, we are living in a society that reflects people making the decision to constantly go with the profit over the principles. And it's in every aspect of life. This is why I asked us the other day, where it's like, what actually factors into who we vote for president? Think about the number one thing. People always talk about the economy, the economy. I understand the economy has to do well. But when people actually say the economy, in my opinion, when you're asking just having regular conversations with your friends and family, what they mean, they're talking about their pockets. Who am I going to have more money in my pockets because of taxes? Which candidate is going to save me more money? Which candidate is going to save me more money in my Social Security? Which candidate is going to forgive my student loans? It's from a personal profit standpoint. So when this is the leading go-getter, the leading thing that determines whether or not we're voting for somebody, how are we programming our minds to move? We're programming our minds to move in a way that we're constantly prioritizing profits over principles. We're not looking at it and saying like, okay, you know what? Which candidate do I believe would establish the best economy for the entire America? Which candidate do I think is going to put us in a safe position when it comes to war or when it comes to the border? Looking at it from an entire an overall American issue rather than just personally to me. And think about what the candidates do. Think about what a lot of these politicians even did with the border. They say, oh, we're welcome. We're a migrant city. We welcome people to come in. Yeah, but the people that are coming in illegally, and they're put in communities, they're put in the impoverished communities. They're not put in the communities where Mayor Eric Adams is living. They're not put in a community where Governor Kathy Hochul is living. But people have made these decisions just based on profit. They're not off of principles. They're based on what's best for me and only me. So if everybody adopts this mindset, where do we end up going?
Mountain filled with ice and rain and wind. Because what's next? What's the next thing that they can decide? We all must think this and we all must believe this.
And Queez asked the question. Okay, so hold on. I want to make sure I'm keeping up. So Urs wrote, DNC is using big words to outshine. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I haven't seen any of the speeches yet for the DNC. I'll definitely watch some today and make sure that we could talk a little bit about the DNC tomorrow. But I haven't seen any speeches yet. But I've been hearing. I heard they got my boy up there, Biden, struggling Like, it's almost like, yo, they just put this whole plan together where it's like, okay, now Biden goes up there. He shows, like, I mean, he's getting words mixed up. What was he talking about? I saw a clip. He's talking about the electoral, and then he was trying to say people think that women don't have the power and the electoral power, and he's talking about electricity or something. He said something like, I don't know. But Queez said, don't we have to, though, in a capitalist society? Queez, bro, I've been thinking about that a lot. Now, capitalist society, obviously, everything revolves around a dollar. However, in my opinion, that does not mean that we do not have principles to the capitalist society. To me, my principles outweigh. I'll give you an example. The question, and I know, Queez, you're not insinuating this, but let me give you an example. If we have to prioritize profit in a capitalist society, would you do something that violates your principles in order to get a raise? Would you throw somebody under the bus in a way that you would not want to be thrown under the bus yourself in order to get a promotion? Would you do something that violates your particular code that you live by in order to be promoted into another position? If the answer is no, then that means that you're prioritizing your principles over the profits. That's what I'm saying that we need to do. Now, if you're okay with once we begin to prioritize the profits over the principles, then that's when we don't care about anything. We don't care about anything but what puts money in our pocket. But Queez wrote, me, no, but it's set up for people to do so. Yeah, it's definitely set up for people to do so. Think about it. Look at the rap. Look at rap. What we talk about with rap and Leor Cohen. That video that we put up where Leor Cohen, who's the head of the record labels, that's who Dame Dash always calls out about being a culture vulture. That's the person that Dame Dash blames for middlemaning the split between him and Jay-Z. That's the person that went on Breakfast Club and said, hey, I don't mind putting this type of music out to your community, Black people. I got to put food on my table. Wouldn't do it in my community. Wouldn't promote this type of negativity in my community, but I don't mind putting it out in yours. Isn't that the same mindset? And when you look at the rap community, look at how they've established a culture. Our entire culture, when it comes to Black culture, what is overrunning and becoming American culture, was established with this concept in mind, with people choosing profits over principles. People with a lot of money who stand in the background, who we don't even know. It's so funny how we'll know all these rappers and artists, like I said before on the last show, but we won't know who's actually signing their checks. Matt, I'm not even sure if I said it on this show or a different show, but we will know all of the rappers. We'll know all the ball players. We'll know all these different people, but we won't actually know the person that the person that gives the rapper the check, the person that gives the athlete the check. That's the celebrity. That's the person that we want to shoot for. That's the one that we want to aim to be like. But think about it. An entire culture has been shaped based on a group of people that we don't know, never see, putting money in impoverished people's hands, taking advantage of their situation because they know that these particular people, they're living in poverty, they're living in pain, they have no money, so therefore I'll give you a few dollars, it's nothing for me, have you jump on stage pushing all these ignorant messages and putting out poison to your community, no problem, right? Because I know that people are drawn to extremism. So the more that I can pay you and have you acting a fool, I know that it's gonna get a lot of attention and I'm gonna be able to make $100 for every dollar that I give you. Profit over principles. We can't allow ourselves to be abused in that particular situation. But think about it. Our entire culture, when it comes to Black culture specifically, which I believe is taking over and just becoming American culture, was shaped on this particular decision, whether or not I'm choosing profit or principles. And people went with the profits. And when people go with the profits and you prioritize that, what ends up happening? You don't prioritize your entire community. The people in power, the people that actually cut the checks for the rappers, the people that actually cut the check for the actors, that cut the check for the ball players, they're prioritizing their principles. within their community at the expense of their principles as far as how they look at us. That's on us to protect ourselves. You get what I'm saying? Now, it would be nice if we lived in a world where people wouldn't take advantage of other groups of people like that. It would be nice to live in that type of world, but based on it not being that, we see what's being done. These particular groups, they're prioritizing their principles because they're saying like, hey, we're going to make sure that our community's good. We'll put up money for that other group, that other community to put out poison into their community, but we're never going to allow that to impact ours. We're just going to take the money. We're going to drain their community. And that's what ends up happening. So let's Rhonda Banner. How's it going, Rhonda? So Rhonda said, left the job, not worth selling my soul. That's a fact. Yo, I told y'all that I've done it before. I think I've done it on a few different occasions. Lucille wrote, what profits a man when he gains the whole world and loses his soul? This is just biblical, because Lucille, what does it say? I think we put it up maybe a few weeks ago in the Bible, the scripture that said that it's harder for a rich man to get, it's harder for a camel to squeeze through the needle. Maybe I'm getting the scriptures confused, but what was the scripture that's talking about how hard it is for a rich, wealthy man to get into heaven? There's a reason why. There's a reason why. So like everything else, and what I know Queez has is a certain level of balance. Now, in my opinion, a lot of us do not we're not pushing for the profits and that align with our principles even. Like we're just kind of cool with just accepting, okay, I'm not prioritizing profits at all. I'm not prioritizing my own business. I'm just going to accept, what whoever gives me what in my 9 to 5. Okay, cool. Well, we see what happens with that. Now you're controlled. Dan Orlovsky, we'll look at him on TV and say, damn, a successful NFL quarterback, made some good money. Now he's working at ESPN. He must be living the dream. He is being controlled. He can't even put up a tweet that says protect our daughters. Think about the place in society that we're in when a father can't put out a tweet saying protect our daughters. That's the world that we live in today. You can put out a tweet. He could have put out, think about all the things that he could have put out, and ESPN wouldn't have had an issue with it. But protecting our daughters, oh, no, now you've crossed the line. Take that tweet down. All right, Rhonda wrote, amen. All right, so let's keep going. We'll listen to a couple more minutes of this, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Or you can't work here. I just don't understand how a corporation adopts that and that no one can argue the other side. Like, hey, there's a physical advantage here that's unfair. Could we at least talk about it? Because there are women and other athletes that don't like this.
Well, look at the corporation involved, the one with the mouse ears. Okay, they are really
ESPN involved with Disney.
Play. Look, I really respect Dan Orlovsky. I think he's a very good football analyst. Seems like a very nice guy. He probably had no idea what he was getting himself into. I mean, generally, he's talking about strong side, blitzes, cover 2s, cover 3, man unders. He probably did not understand. In fact, I know he didn't understand the culture war he was stepping into. And when you step into it, like certain people are, you better be able to be a little bit bulletproof, if not incredibly thick-skinned like you are, Jason. I mean, when you put up any benign comment today, whether it's in regards to politics or issues like abortion, you have to understand one thing. Not everybody is going to agree with you, and you have to be able to handle the heat. But again, this goes back to who's really in charge. It's not so much ESPN, it's Disney.
So let's leave it there. I think there's a lot of things for us to consider right now, but see, this is the problem when corporations and companies get bullied into having political identities, being a part of political agendas. Look what happened with 2020 when they were writing Black Lives Matter on the street, when they were running around to different businesses. They even did it. Y'all know the story about Cuban Pete's. They're doing a popular restaurant in Montclair. But where all these corporations were now almost held at gunpoint by these social activists and saying, hey, if you don't put Black Lives Matter, this sticker in your window, then we're no longer shopping here. If you no longer put this rainbow sticker in this window, then we're no longer shopping here. Like, bro, like just off of principle, if you come into my business and say, if I don't do this, now I'm not doing it. Because you're trying to bully me. And when the companies got bullied, when they have these, what are they, ESG scores or all the, I forget what exactly they're called. When the companies get bullied, then they have to end up bullying the employees because they've decided to take a bag. They've decided to work out a deal. If your boss decides to work out a deal and say, hey, I can get these deals done, have these connections made by somebody with, a higher up, as long as I agree that my particular company is going to push this particular agenda, align with these views, align with this party, align with this social group, whatever it may be. Now, what does that boss have to do? Now, what does that owner have to do? It has to make sure that all their employees are on board with that, and it has nothing to do with them, doesn't necessarily align with their principles, but they do not care. They do not care. Now, the owner doesn't care because he profits, so he's just looking at it like, hey, I'm just boosting my company. This is helping me. But the company, the people that are just getting their paycheck every other week, now you just become a pawn in their army. And if you don't, and that to me, even though the Democrats like to run around and talk about, oh, Project 2025, you're going to be enslaved. There's a lot of people that are enslaved to their jobs right now. Enslaved to their jobs right now, where if you say something that you believe that is right to your owner or to your boss, to your manager, your boss could disrespect you, your manager could disrespect you, and you're worried that if you say something just that aligns with your integrity, we will put our integrity, we'll put our pride, we'll put our principles to the side because of what? Well, I mean, I got to make sure I put food on the table. Profits over principles. I don't know. It's for everybody to decide. It's a personal choice. Look, some people are going to decide to stand on their principles. Other people will just ride it out, get violated and and be okay with it. So it's a personal decision. You figure out what you're built for and then you move accordingly. All right. So Queez wrote, Disney stock is dropping. Is it their political stance? Yo, but this is the whole thing that they had with think about the back and forth that they had with Elon Musk, where Elon Musk came, he was at that conference where the Disney guy, I think, was talking ish about him. And then he came on stage because Disney was saying, oh, we're no longer going to put advertising on Twitter when Elon took it off. Because, Elon came with an entirely different approach. He came with a more conservative approach. Twitter, when it was Twitter, we saw what it was. It was all Democratic. They were silencing Republican initiatives. They were silencing Republican posts. They were silencing anything that spoke against the jab and the pandemic, all these different things. They were completely silencing them and only allowing messaging to be pushed that was pro-democratic. Now Elon came on board. So it's a battle that's above a lot of us, maybe it's above our pay grade, but it impacts us all. And if we don't pay attention to it, we'll get caught up in it. So when you had Disney going back and forth with Elon, it's about the free speech. It's about all these different things that do not align with a Disney guy who probably already gave a bag of money to the Democrats or took some type of deal and now has to push and promote their agendas. Alana wrote, he carried on a generational curse. He just passed it off to his daughter. Yeah, Alana. Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing with everything, Lana. Whatever we don't address, whenever we kick the can down the road, every issue that we're confronted with, that we do not stand up to, I should say every issue that we're presented with and that we do not confront, that we do not address. It's almost like if you don't address a bully, he's going to keep bullying. She's going to keep bullying. And now because you didn't address it, now that bully is going to continue to bully the kids next year, the kids in the other classroom. This is the same thing. When we don't address something, it's going to be passed on to the generation next. Every issue that our generation does not fix, every issue that our generation does not confront aggressively and intentionally to produce different results, the next generation is going to have to deal with that. We're just kicking the can down the road. So All right, that's the story on that. We're getting ready to move to. Hold on, what did Lana write? But at least she gets the latest pair of Nikes. Yeah, I'm sure Dan Orlovsky keeps her fresh. Dan was a cool dude, though. And in all actuality, a lot of it, I actually, with Dan putting the tweet down, I appreciate Dan coming out and saying all this. Because if he didn't say any of this, he would have just taken the tweet down. Nobody would have talked about it. So in a lot of ways, if I was ESPN, I would be upset that Dan Orlovsky came out and said this. Because he's pretty much telling y'all, hey, this is what you got to do. You got to be willing to compromise your own values. You got to be willing to take your personal brand and give it to another company. Give it to the company that you work for. And it's not about you anymore. It's about their principles and what's best for their company, not necessarily what's best for you, your community, and the things that you align with. So let's move on to this next topic with Planned Parenthood. All right, so I thought